The most prominent aspect of the Turks throughout history is undoubtedly that they are good soldiers. The foundation of the Turkish nation, which has established states under various names since ancient times, is based on a regular military organization. Military service has been a national duty for Turks beyond a profession. In other words, military service is a privileged profession for Turks. This is so from the Asian Hun state to today's modern Turkey. For this reason, it has been a pioneer nation in the military field for centuries. When Median established the first regular army of the Turks in 209 BC, he designed this army according to the decimal system, a first in the world. This system is still used by many states today. Considering these situations, one of the most effective factors in the growth of the Ottoman Empire, which had transformed from a small principality into a world empire thanks to its military accumulation from the past, was its armies. Thanks to this century of experience, the most advanced and experienced army of its time was in the Ottoman Empire. All of the soldiers in this army were strong warriors who received special training for their era. As a matter of fact, one of the most important reasons for the collapse of the Ottoman Empire was the collapse of the military system. Military order of the Ottoman Empire. Kapikulu soldiers were divided into various classes as state soldiers and auxiliary forces. All of them were units that received special training in their fields and had different duties. However, there was such a unity within this military group that there was no precedent in the world. This unit was the crazy unit in the class of state soldiers. Turkish means Deliler. Distinguished for their extraordinary courage and determination to fight, this fearless suicide squad had served the military for many years. In fact, although they were given the name, evidence, which means guide, they were called insane among the people because of their brave and fearless attack on the enemy. The reason they got the name crazy was that they were volunteers between the ages of 20 to 25 and were almost like a suicide team. This union, which emerged spontaneously from the end of the 15th century. So to speak, it instilled fear not only in the enemy but also in the friend. Even many soldiers in the army were afraid of this union. Although there is no definite information about the first appearance of the insane, it is known that they were allowed to fight in a controlled manner by the state in the 16th century. Delis had emerged in the borders of Rumelia, where the Ottoman conquests continued most intensely. In some ancient sources, it is recorded that the winged soldiers, called Madmen, fought in the 1444 Varna and 1448 Kosovo battles. In fact, the reason for the emergence of the Delis was the Ottomans' own internal problems, namely the fights for the throne. The turmoil caused by the uprisings that broke out unexpectedly all over Anatolia prompted the Rumelian border lords to take precautions. The Rumelian lords, who were afraid of being caught unprepared in the face of such unexpected dangers, eventually saw the cavalry units directly subordinate to them as a solution, unlike the raiders. And so the Delis took their place on the stage of history. From this date on, the evidence, which took a good place in the Ottoman army, evolved into the process of being guard units around the bays and consisted of the members of the Turkish coastal tribes to a very, very large extent. Later, when their numbers increased, they turned into a terrible war element. Of course, it was not easy to join such a union. A person who wanted to join the insane first had to fulfill two basic conditions. The first is to have a flamboyant and scary body. The second is to prove that he is not afraid to die and has courage. The Delis, who fulfilled these conditions and successfully completed the training stage by proving themselves and their courage, would take an oath with a ceremony and would have officially joined the Delen Fury by wearing the headgear peculiar to the hearth. Race or religion didn't matter to join the insane. Most of them were chosen from among the peoples living in Turks and Rumelia. It was possible to come across Turks, Bosnians, Croats and other Slavic peoples. Young people who wanted to join the Mad Union were first given to one of the agas called Zobu and brought up. In this process, the methods and rules of the hearth were taught, and he was promised that he would serve the state after proving himself and would not return from any fight. Afterwards, he was put on a madman's head during the ceremony and was recorded in the notebook as apprentice to the network. The young man whose turn came, passed to the squire and could even rise in rank. Of course, the duty of young people who accepted such harsh conditions would not be ordinary. The fearsome-looking youths had to have special assignments where they could use their looks and combat abilities. In this sense, the most important task of the Delhis advancing in front of the Ottoman army was to destroy the morale and psychology of the enemy. While the enemies who saw them were trying to understand what was going on, it was one of their important virtues to catch the enemy unprepared. Apart from these, the Dalilar, who were state soldiers, prevented enemy raids at the borders and undertook a kind of raider mission by organizing counter-raids. In this way, border security would also be protected. Their loyalty to the Sultan was complete. In fact, we see that Delhis did not participate in any of the events that were frequently seen in Ottoman history, started by janissaries and other soldiers, and often resulted in the murder of a statesman. The most distinctive feature of the Mad Corps was their extraordinarily diverse and ornate clothing. So why were the lunatics dressed like that? The reason for this was probably to frighten his enemies by appearing larger than he was before the enemy, creating the perception that he was encountering a superhuman being. The enemy, who faced the madmen, would be defeated strategically by losing his position advantage before he could understand what his opponent was. They wore clothes made of the skins of wild animals such as spotted hyenas, leopards and wolves, which were particularly difficult to hunt, and on which eagle feathers were attached. Their shalwars were also made of wolf or bear skin. According to various sources, they used curved machetes, boat shields, spears, swords, axes and brown falcons as weapons and decorated their shields with colorful bird feathers. In ceremonies, they wore feathers on their backs and heads that gave the appearance of an eagle with its wings spread. Not only themselves, but the horses they used were just as extraordinary as themselves. The cover of the horses was also made of the skin of animals such as lions, tigers and wolves. Instead of the protective clothing that every soldier must wear, such as helmets, they used kapaks on their heads, which are all colored and covered with strange feathers. Since they did not use armor to protect themselves from incoming blows, these features allowed them to be fast and agile. Later, his clothes were changed. From the 17th century on their heads they began to wear a kalpak of black lambskin, a cubit long. According to a rumor, they trained by slapping them with their bare hands on soaked marble in order to be able to fight even when they were unarmed. After these studies, the calluses of the inner parts of the hands turned their hands into a serious weapon. And the concept of Ottoman slap also emerged from these rumors. Seen as a voluntary community by some historians, the Delhis served as an important element of war until the 18th century. When the expected end of the Ottoman Empire was approaching, the insane also got their share from the deterioration seen in the other military units that made up his army. They lost their famous military discipline and began to not play an active role in the wars and torment the people. When they started to become corrupt bandits, they were tried to be reformed and disciplined by the state, but this was not successful. In 1829, they were distributed by Mahmud and took their place on the dusty shelves of history. We have come to the end of the video. Do not forget to write your opinions on this subject and different topics you are curious about in the comments section. See you next week. Goodbye.